Hello and welcome to the 1912 Exiles podcast, the original, the biggest, the best Newport County podcast made by the fans for the fans. We're brought to you by the Terrace Cymru podcast network and in association with the wonderful team at the Riverside Sports Bar in Newport, the city's home for live sport, with a great menu to get your burger fix. I'm Jamie, coming to you today on a gloomy Monday afternoon here in North London, 24 hours after an even gloomier Sunday. Now, I was planning on doing my best Ian Street impression for yesterday's FA Cup tie up at Boreham Wood, but to be frank, and I'll come on to it, I don't think my thoughts and feelings at the time would be erudite, articulate, eloquent enough for a podcast episode. We'd also needed that swear but bleep for about probably half of this podcast, to be honest with you. It's a funny one, really. I was looking forward to seeing us play in what would have been my first game of the Christian Fuchs era. It's been a little while now for me, with life getting in the way and living away from South Wales, making it tricky to get to many games. So I was looking forward to a London away and a cup match as well. And with a place like place in the third round, the prize for the victors, it did feel like a bit of a chance to make a mark on this season. Yes, we came into the game as underdogs. I think somebody said we were even 4-1 the bookies were making us at the start of the day. And we're up against a National League outfit going well. But I felt that rather than it being a bit of a free hit, as you'd see with some other cup games like the Millwall tie, it was important for us to put on a performance, to really kickstart the season. Plus the advantage of reaching the third round with a potential for more prize money, TV ties against Premier League opposition. It was more important than it looked on the face of it, I would think. Yeah, and getting the fans back on side too. There's another reason why it was important to at least put on a bit of a show or put on a bit of fight in the match yesterday. Now, I've not really hidden my feelings on the team this season. It's been abject, really. Plenty of the fan base are either totally resigned to relegation. Others are on the precipice of feeling that way. Perhaps yesterday pushed them over the edge a bit. But what I'd say is that we couldn't wait any longer to change the management. The squad isn't good enough to keep us in the Football League, and you felt that something needed to change before January, so they made that change. And we'll have to see whether we can keep in touch and whether we can make some reinforcements in the transfer window. Well, let's get on to the game yesterday then. If we must power on. What I saw left me utterly despondent. I've seen us play poorly before, and most of you listeners have as well, but this felt different to previous games or seasons. I have to say that this is probably the least I've ever felt connected to this club. I was looking at those players on the pitch yesterday, and I just didn't feel like there was any kind of this is my team. It just felt like I was watching a team play, and that is quite a sort of depressing thought when you really lose that. And I know clubs from all across the country, up and down the leagues, have had that soul ripped away from their club, from the fans before, and it's not a nice feeling. But I actually left on the 70 minutes yesterday. I'm not one to do that normally. I'm normally let's stick through, even though I can't see us getting back into the game. But it was a little bit more than that, wasn't it? Now, I was starting to think about heading out on, I think, 55. I saw loads of folks say it's the first time they've ever left early from a game, or that they switched the TV off. One commenter on social media, he said that he was embarrassed to wear a county shirt today, which he'd never felt that before. And I get that as well. I'll go on a run in London and wear a Newport shirt on my run. I don't care if we've just been tanked by another team. But if you're embarrassed, if you're no longer proud to wear a shirt out and about, that tells you something about the state of where the fans' brains are, doesn't it? And the thing is as well, there's not even any gallows humour on the terraces anymore. I think we can all have a joke about oh yeah, we're pretty awful, we're terrible, blah blah blah, but have a laugh about it. But yesterday there was none of that at all. It was just ire, anger. I think, we can accept being poor, relatively speaking, but the performance was utterly insipid. It was devoid of any emotion or hunger or fight or anything. And again, I'd always advocate for let's have a strong plan ahead of passion. um, it's just I don't know where we go from here. I was actually stood with friend of the pod David Cakebread on the terrace. We both brought mates along to the game, and I just overheard behind me him apologising to his friend. He just went, "Sorry, mate." And he messaged me at full time saying there was just so much anger directed towards the bench and the players, and I think that's just going to continue unless we see a drastic change in that sort of approach, that mentality, and what we see, body language, things like that. And the thing is, I know it's different for many of you listeners living in the South Wales area, regular goers to Rodney Parade, but speaking personally, I find it so hard now to justify for me to come to Newport. It's £100 on a train ticket, £24 on a match ticket, plus food and drink, to come and see us play. And I just can't, I'm struggling to justify that at the moment. And even yesterday, it's obviously not too much of a schlep for me. It's one of probably the closest aways I'm ever going to have, really. But even yesterday, it's a long way for those on the supporters coach and having a day out. It's December, a Sunday. It's pretty miserable. It's like, how do you lift yourself up for that? And I know we're going up to Cymru on Wednesday, and I don't see why you'd want to make that journey and spend the money. And frankly, I'm not sure how many fans are going to be jumping on those buses going up the M5 and the M6. So we'll have to wait and see how many away fans make that journey. Now, I'm not one for insisting the manager has to put on a show on the touchline by jumping and yelling. But as I was just saying as well, with the body language, I feel like the passive nature of the bench reminded me of the end of those previous regimes, where we've had Jardim, Hughes, Rowbury, probably even Flynn at one point as well. And they all, at the end of those regimes, when you can tell the writings on the wall, they look a bit lost on the touchline and they look a bit bereft of ideas. Now, Fuchs is 3 games in, arguably even 2 games in if you don't want to count that first one. And he's giving that same aura. He was giving the same sort of feeling of, I don't know what to do. And like I say, I said at the time, I wasn't convinced by his appointment for his lack of experience, coaching experience. And for all I know, he could be an astute tactician, but at this level, when there is Football League status on the line, if you don't have the skill set in the squad, you need to G up your players and give them the confidence to become more than the sum of their parts. And that is what people like Flinney, people like Graham Coughlin, that's what they were able to do so well. Because that's what you need at this level. That's what you need when you're struggling for points. You need to just sort of make these players feel 10 foot tall. I won't go into all of there are the people on the pod and people who listen who are much more tactically astute than I am. But tactically, yesterday, I couldn't tell you what we were trying to do. Lots of running around, but ultimately chasing shadows. Boreham Wood were by far the superior team, and in the cold light of day, a team just really up for it at home against a struggling team in the cup. You could see this result coming. So on the one hand, we shouldn't be too disheartened by the fact that we lost, but it's the manner of that defeat. The selection itself looked quite strange. I thought Clark coming on to shore up the back in the middle of the second half to provide that bit of experience was too late. Perhaps he should have started. I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that would have made a difference. Taking off Braybrook as well in the second half just looked like us throwing in the towel. We kind of maybe wanted to keep him fit and and ready for Wednesday when we need the points, once we'd already lost this game. The issue is, at the start of the season, I could see a bit of potential in this team. I remember Reindorf's goal up at Barnet in the League Cup. I thought Whitmore, Antwi, were looking half decent. And of course, Jenkins being that bit of a star surprise package coming in from the Cymru leagues. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that potential's gone, because yesterday we saw none of that. I saw 11 players on that pitch with very little cohesion, and I didn't see much anger or frustration on their faces at conceding. It all just felt a little bit inevitable. The way we're playing, the lack of leadership from management and the board will drive fans away, and that's money which the club desperately needs. If there are investors in the pipeline, why would they want to pour money into a club that frankly is on its knees? The club is not going to become more valuable with a relegation. It's so hard to see what the future holds for Newport County. It really, really is. Sorry, folks, this hasn't been a happier episode for you. I'd love to have regaled you with stories of a trip to a new ground for me, but my mood was dampened so much by a grey, bleak Sunday afternoon that all I can tell you is that it's a classic non-league ground with 3 stands and an open terrace where most of the away fans were stood. They were a friendly bunch on the turnstiles, a food truck at least, but that was the highlight of the day, really. And I don't think, to be honest, that going through all the socials as a bit of a 606 here will do us any good either, or lift our spirits. All I can tell you is it's anger, it's heartbreaking, and it's the fact that we can all see what direction we are heading in, and we know that as a fan base, we are, maybe a little powerless to change it. Maybe we're not powerless, I don't know, but it feels that way at the moment. I actually made an analogy with between Newport and the England cricket team a few weeks ago, and it was all about needing to have a set plan, motivate the players to perform without fear, and then that kind of fell on its face immediately as that Basball project seems to be failing. But to be honest, I could make the same analogy now between the two teams to make an entirely different point. Now, if you follow cricket, you'll know that there are huge question marks around the Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum project, and that is quite obvious to everyone that it's not going to succeed in Australia. It's not what will constitute success, and that this team need to find an element of pragmatism and realism they need to soak up the pressure when required. And it sounds like the England captain, at least in his interviews after the second test at the weekend, he's come to accept that and feels a change is necessary. And we'll see if they actually make a change or not. But can we say the same about Newport County's chairman's project? Can we? We all understand what the plan and the project was. He was very clear about that. But is it working? And can we adapt to our current predicament? I think I'll leave it there. I think I will. Shout out to all the fans who travelled yesterday, and further shout outs to those making the trip to Cymru. You folks are heroes. And beefs, I think this entire episode has been a beef, to be honest, so I won't dredge up anything more. Right, before we go, just to let you know that Ed spoke to the Crew Fan Railwaymen podcast ahead of the game this week. I've listened to it and it does sound like therapy, so you may wish to check that out, folks. I've left a link in the show notes. And as ever, thank you all for your kind words, your comments, the conversations. We're frankly all in this together. So until we next speak, and I mean all of this with genuine sincerity, look after yourselves, look after each other, and as always, keep it county.